snow fell in thick sheets across the ridgeline, cloaking the world in white silence. The pines stood frozen and tall, their boughs sagging beneath the weight of winter. Somewhere in the blur of flakes and shadow, the sharp crack of gunfire shattered the stillness. Screams followed, short, clipped, human. Sergeant Cole kept low in the snowdrift, unmoving, his breath shallow against the frost on his balaclava. His left arm was bound tight in makeshift gauze and blood-crusted bandages. The plasma burn beneath still throbbed, but he ignored it. He had more pressing things to watch. Through the scope of his battered monocular, he scanned the treeline 200 meters below. Alien silhouettes moved with precise, confident grace. 12 of them, armored, elegant, and laughing. Not with joy, but with cruel amusement. One of them, taller than the rest, stepped forward. Even from a distance, the arrogance in his posture was clear. Unlike his kin, his armor gleamed silver blue with jagged glyphs etched into the plating. His rifle was slung casually on his back, not out of laziness, but dominance. Karzal, commander of the 7th Strike Clade. Cole knew the name. The mission brief had described him as an elite enforcer of the Cyrex Dominion, undefeated in 17 planetary operations. He was more than a soldier. He was a symbol, and symbols had a tendency to bleed just like anyone else. Karzal was examining a captured human rifle, an antique bolt-action relic from Earth's mid-20th century. One of the scouts must have been carrying it as a keepsake. The commander turned it over in his long, clawed fingers, his mandibles clicking with disgust. This, his voice crackled over the translator, drifting through the stillness. This is what they fight with. What is this, a club? Laughter erupted among his troops. Cole's jaw tightened. He said nothing. The rifle they mocked had belonged to Private Myers, one of the youngest in the squad. Barely out of training. Too idealistic. Too eager. He'd talked about Earth like it was still home. Like it mattered. The aliens surrounded 3 human survivors dragged from the wreckage of a downed transport. One of them was Myers, gagged, face bruised, one eye swollen shut. Karzal raised the old rifle, mimicking the human stance with exaggerated theatricality. "Behold," he declared, "the primitive weapon of a primitive race." Without warning, he fired. The shot rang sharp and raw across the trees. Myers' body collapsed backward into the snow, a gaping hole where his chest had been. The laughter returned. Cole didn't flinch. He didn't scream. He didn't rage. His heart beat slow, steady. His gloved hand reached back into the snow, brushing away the powder until he touched metal. Buried beneath frost and silence, his weapon waited. The anti-tank rifle wasn't standard issue. It was massive, archaic, and looked more like a siege weapon than a firearm. Rechambered and customized over decades, it was passed down like a myth among Earth's frontier units. Designed to take out armored vehicles. Overkill for infantry. Perfect for Cyrex elite. He slid it forward with reverence. The barrel alone stretched nearly as long as he was tall. A thick, armored bipod locked into place with a satisfying click. Cole checked the feed. A belt of tungsten core rounds gleamed under the pale light. A memory surfaced. Myers grinning in the barracks, holding that old bolt action, saying, "It's not about the tech, Sarge. It's about the intent." Cole had chuckled then. He wasn't laughing now. Down below, the aliens began torching the remains of the transport. Blue plasma hissed against metal. The snow around the wreck boiled into steam. Cole exhaled slowly. The wind shifted. He adjusted the sight, tracking Karzal as the commander turned toward the forest's edge. They'd come here expecting resistance, yes, but not terror. The Cyrex never feared humans. Why would they? Their weapons were cleaner. Their armor stronger. Their technology decades ahead. They thought humanity was a relic clinging to bullets and grit. They were about to be reminded what grit could do. Cole focused on Karzal's chestplate. No weak points visible. Too much reactive armor. But his left hip actuator, just under the power core there. His finger rested on the trigger, but he didn't pull it yet. No, not yet. This wasn't about revenge. This was about sending a message. One by one. The first target was the comms specialist, taller, with a bulky dish rigged to his back. Cole adjusted for wind. One breath in. Boom. The report of the anti-tank rifle rolled through the valley like thunder. The round punched through armor, flesh, and bone. The alien's torso vanished in a fine mist of violet gore. Karzal spun. Shouts rose. Confusion. Cole was already repositioning. They'd try to triangulate him. Good. Let them. This forest was his. They were the invaders. He slid behind another snowbank, setting up the next shot. The rifle's recoil was immense, but he'd braced for it. His shoulder screamed in protest, but pain was background noise now. He sighted in again. Second shot. One of the fire team leaders. Head and helmet separated mid-shout. Panic bloomed. The aliens opened fire into the trees. Plasma bolts hissed, setting trees alight. But they were firing blind. Every shot a guess. Every sound a threat. Cole moved like a ghost. Down below, Karzal barked orders. The formation tightened. Defensive perimeter established. But the cracks were showing. These weren't machines. They weren't ready for a predator they couldn't see. Cole crawled beneath a fallen tree, breath slow, legs numb from the cold. He wasn't worried about frostbite. He wouldn't need to be alive that long if he failed. He counted the rounds. 5 left. That would be enough. A shout echoed through the snow. They'd found Meyer's rifle, propped against a tree. Beside it, carved with a bayonet into the bark, were 3 words. Still think funny? Karzal stared at the message. The color drained from his facial vents. He'd stopped laughing. Good. Cole adjusted the scope. Karzal's head twitched slightly. Frustration, maybe fear. Cole didn't care. He was saving that one for last. Another alien moved to flank. Boom. Third shot. The forest shook. Cole rolled to his side, coughing, the pain in his ribs sharp now. The recoil had worsened his injuries, but he wasn't done. He never stopped when it hurt. That was the problem with the Cyrex. They didn't understand suffering. They sterilized their wars. Drones, plasma, precision strikes. They thought pain was inefficiency. Humans had lived in pain, evolved in it, built civilizations with blood in their teeth. And when someone laughed at that, when someone mocked that struggle, they invited the monster. Cole crawled deeper into the snow as the fires raged behind him. The wind howled louder now, like it too was angry. He gripped the anti-tank rifle tighter. They'd laughed at the old gun. They wouldn't laugh at this one. Not for long. Not when it roared. The fourth shot tore through the upper shoulder of a Cyrex enforcer as he scrambled behind cover. His cry was gurgled and choked, and the kinetic force of the round flung him into the burning husk of a human transport. Karzal ducked behind the wreckage, mandibles clenched. Forgone in under 90 seconds. No visual on the attacker. No trace on heat scans. Just death, precise and brutal, coming from somewhere in the trees. Cole had vanished again. The wind carried embers from the wreck, smoke coiling into the sky like signals of defiance. The remaining Cyrex soldiers moved in tight formations now, circling back to back, rifles aimed outward, scanning every flicker of movement. Their confidence was gone, replaced by controlled fear. Tactical chatter flared across their comms, fragmented and sharp. Unknown weapon profile. Non-energy. High velocity. Where's the shooter? Everywhere, one muttered. Then silence. Karzal rose slightly, watching the tree lean through his visor. This wasn't combat. This was psychological dissection. Every second ticked like a countdown to the next casualty. He'd underestimated them. Him, that human. He tapped into the Dominion's tactical uplink. No orbital support. No nearby patrols. The snowstorm had cut them off. Perfect isolation. Meanwhile, Sergeant Cole was circling. He didn't move fast. Fast got you killed. Every reposition was deliberate, strategic. Every footprint erased behind him. Pain clawed up his side like fire-licking bone, but he gritted through it. Combat drugs numbed the worst of it, but the cold did the rest. He reached a narrow ravine, natural cover. Deep shadows pooled beneath fallen trees. He stopped, lowering the rifle and taking slow, even breaths. 3 rounds left. He thought of his team. Myers, Silas, Harper, all gone, ambushed during extraction. The Cyrex had dropped in with surgical brutality, expecting to wipe out a recon squad and leave no trace. That had been the plan, but they'd missed something. They hadn't killed him, and that mistake was unraveling them. He blinked snowflakes from his lashes, eyes stinging. Karzal was the target, but taking him down required more than a single shot. It required the right moment, a crack in the commander's poise, the kind that only comes when soldiers begin to doubt their gods. A sound reached his ears, soft, muffled, but human. Cole twisted sharply, aiming low, finger on the trigger, then stopped. A figure staggered from the trees, one hand clutching a bloodied side. Uniform scorched, helmet cracked. Private Harper. She was alive. Barely. Cole reached her in seconds, pulling her into the ravine. Her eyes fluttered open, dazed but locked on him with a flicker of recognition. Jesus. Sarge, she rasped. Quiet. He pressed 2 fingers to her throat, pulse faint but steady. He checked her wounds. Deep plasma burn along the ribs, but not fatal. Thought you were dead, she muttered. I thought you were, he said. They executed Myers. I know. Harper's jaw tightened. Then she looked past him at the massive rifle resting in the snow. You're doing it again, she said. He nodded once. You always said you'd die in a blaze of stubborn. Still the plan. She exhaled, wincing. How many? 4 down. She managed a weak smile. They're going to start making up gods for you. He didn't smile back. You can't stay here, he said. You move west. 10 clicks. Ridgeline. Emergency beacon. I can still fight. You can't run 5 feet. Her silence was admission. Her fingers dug into the fabric of his sleeve. Kill that bastard, she whispered. He squeezed her hand, just once, then passed her a flare with a cracked grin. Only if he dies loud. As Cole moved back toward the edge of the ravine, his mind hardened. Now he had something else they'd try to take. Someone who'd crawled back from death just to spit in their direction. That kind of defiance was contagious. He returned to position and rechecked the remaining ammunition. 3 rounds. 3 names. They were getting closer. Cautious, but hunting now. The laughter was gone. The arrogance had decayed into a quiet desperation. That was when humans were most dangerous, when the enemy thought they'd stripped us bare and still found teeth. He spotted movement. The Cyrex were sweeping with tight formations now, pairs covering angles. A decoy drone hovered overhead, flitting low, scanning for signatures. Cole aimed for the drone first. A clean shot, minimal recoil. He lined up the bead, then paused. No, let them think the sky was safe. He waited. Moments later, a pair of soldiers stepped forward into a clearing, eyes locked upward, watching the drone feed. That's when he fired. The round hit the lead soldier center mass, detonating the power core in his chest plate. The resulting explosion incinerated the other before he could scream. 2 gone. 1 shot. 5 down. The drone flailed, blinded by feedback from the blast. In the chaos, Cole vanished again. This time, the Cyrex didn't shout. They whispered. They were unraveling. Karzal's frustration turned into something colder. Humiliation. He activated thermal sweeps, fired suppression rounds into empty woods, even deployed shock mines in a widening perimeter. Still no sign. Just bodies. And blood. He knelt near the last kill site, inspecting the scorch marks. The force of the bullet had ruptured internal organs through armor. A primitive weapon, yes, but wielded like a scalpel in a surgeon's hand. "What is he?" one of the Cyrex muttered. Karzal turned sharply. "Not a man," he said. "A myth we forgot to fear. But even myths bleed." Cole set up again. This time, 50 meters from the previous site. He moved faster now, relying on muscle memory and instinct. His nerves screamed, but his mind was silent. Focused. The final round waited in the chamber, and it belonged to Karzal. He saw him now, standing amidst his soldiers, barking commands. The perfect target, but this wasn't about a clean kill. This was about choice. So he waited again, watched, listened, and then it came. One of the Cyrex, panicked, desperate, began to run. Maybe he thought escape was possible. Maybe he just couldn't take the tension anymore. Either way, he fled into the trees. Karzal raised his rifle and fired into his own man's back. The soldier collapsed mid-stride, armor splitting open. Control through fear. The Dominion's favorite tactic. Cole smiled bitterly. That was the moment he needed. He aimed. Karzal turned slightly, watching the corpse fall. Then the world cracked. The round hit just above the hip actuator, exactly where Cole had planned. Not a kill shot, but devastating. Armor caved inward. Flesh tore. The commander crumpled, shrieking as the exosuit systems shorted out in a burst of sparks and shrill whines. Panic erupted. The remaining soldiers swarmed to him. Cole didn't fire again. He didn't need to. Let them live with it. Let them carry him back. Wounded, broken, defeated. Let them tell others. The storm intensified, snow roaring now like applause. Cole lay flat beneath the cover of twisted roots, his breath ragged. He closed his eyes, body trembling. He didn't know if he could make it back. Didn't know if Harper would survive. But one thing was certain. They had come to laugh. Now they would remember. And fear. The sky over the ridge pulsed with a cold, colorless light as morning broke, casting pale beams across the battlefield below. Smoke from the burning wreck still lingered, curling around scorched trees and shattered stones. Blood, both human and alien, stained the snow in black and crimson. It wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was a graveyard. Private Harper lay still beneath the hollowed-out root of a fallen tree, the flare tucked beside her like a secret. Her breathing was shallow but steady. The pain came in waves, sharp enough to make her eyes water, but she clenched her jaw and focused on one thought: stay alive. If Cole made it back, she needed to be here. If he didn't, she still needed to be here. 10 meters away, something shifted. Her hand twitched toward her sidearm, breath catching, but it wasn't Cyrex. It was human. Sergeant Cole appeared like a ghost, cloaked in filth and snow, rifle slung across his back, left arm cradling his ribs. One eye was swollen, nearly shut, but the fire behind it still burned. She exhaled. Relief was too small a word. He knelt beside her, checked her pulse again. "You look like hell," she rasped. "You sound worse," he muttered. Harper blinked. "Did you get him?" Cole didn't answer immediately. He just gave a faint nod. "I put one in his gut. He won't walk again." A ghost of a grin tugged at Harper's mouth. "Could have made it the head." "No," he said flatly. "The gut screams longer." She didn't argue. He pulled a field medkit from his pack and got to work, fingers stiff and shaking, but methodical. The bleeding was under control. She had a shot if they moved fast. Harper glanced up at him. "You're limping." Took a piece of shrapnel. "Not deep." She raised an eyebrow. "It's not," he repeated, more to himself than her. Above them, the wind shifted. The sound of the forest changed. The unnatural silence that had followed the firefight began to fade. Birds returned. Branches creaked. Life was reclaiming the field, as it always did after death. But they weren't safe yet. Cole stood, scanning the ridge. His eyes narrowed. The Cyrex weren't retreating. They were regrouping. He'd wounded their commander, shattered their pride, and killed half their strike team. But they were Dominion. They didn't back down. Not when humiliated. They wanted blood. "I need you to stay here," Cole said. "If I draw them off, you have a chance." Harper shook her head weakly. "No hero plays. Not again. It's not a play. It's a strategy. Cole, if you go back out there with a half-empty mag and a punctured lung, I'll buy you time," he said, cutting her off. "We don't both make it if we stay put." She didn't have the strength to argue, only enough to grab his wrist and hold tight. "If you're gonna die," she whispered, "make sure it's worth it." He didn't promise anything. Cole vanished back into the trees with the silence of a predator. Snow muffled his steps, and every breath steamed briefly before disappearing. He discarded the heavy rifle. Too loud now. He moved with a combat knife in one hand and a sidearm with a single round in the other. It would have to be enough. The Cyrex were spreading out again, methodical in their approach. Karzal had been airlifted an hour earlier, screaming through a filtered comlink, his voice warped with pain and venom. But his second-in-command, Vroth, had taken control. Less pride, more precision. Cole had studied his type. Cold, calculating, dangerous in a way emotion could never be. He found their scent trail near the edge of the gorge. Boot prints, drag marks, plasma scorchings on a fallen trunk. They were hunting now, not for intel or tactical victory, but for revenge. That made them predictable. He moved fast, circling downwind. In another life, he would have made a damn good predator. In this one, he was just trying to survive long enough to break their will. He reached the ridge, slipped over the edge, and waited. Moments later, the first squad appeared. 5 Cyrex soldiers, weapons drawn, scanning the woods. Cole timed it perfectly. He moved like smoke, silent and without warning. The first alien never saw him coming, just the flick of a blade across his throat. The second turned and caught a boot to the ribs, knocking his rifle loose. Cole fired once. The third dropped. For seconds, 3 dead. The last 2 bolted. He didn't chase. Let them run. Let them scream about the ghost in the trees. He pulled back again, ducking into a frozen hollow. His side throbbed with every breath. Blood soaked his shirt now, the bandage long since breached. He knew what was coming. Vroth would rally the rest, launch a full sweep, burn the entire forest down if he had to. Cole couldn't stop it, but he could finish it. He pulled the last charge from his vest, an old EMP field mine. Human tech. Basic, but devastating when used right. He rigged it on a half-buried branch, buried the trigger beneath loose snow, then began leaving a trail, just faint enough to be noticed, just clear enough to be followed. The bait was set. Minutes passed. Then branches snapped in the distance. The crunch of boots. 12 soldiers, all closing in. Cole hobbled to the top of a narrow bluff overlooking the trap. His vision swam. His lips were blue from cold, but he forced himself to stay upright. The Cyrex moved into position. One stepped onto the pressure plate. The mine detonated with a pulse of white light and concussive force. Shields shorted. Weapons shut down. Helmets overloaded. The entire squad went blind for 6 seconds. Cole was already moving. He hit them like a storm. The sidearm cracked once, center mass. Then the blade sang. Flesh and metal collided. Screams tore through the woods. By the time the EMP field faded, 7 Cyrex were on the ground. The rest fled. Not tactical retreat, pure fear. Vroth didn't send more. He had seen the reports. watched his men fall in silence. And in the end, he chose survival over honor. They would leave. Cole dropped to his knees as the last of them vanished into the trees. His hands were numb, his vision blurred, but he smiled. They weren't laughing anymore. The forest at last fell still. The forest had gone silent again. But this time, it wasn't the silence of anticipation. It was the quiet that came after death, after blood cooled and fires burned themselves out. Snowflakes drifted lazily from a colorless sky, masking the remnants of combat beneath a fresh shroud. For a few precious minutes, it looked like the world had never known war. Cole collapsed against a tree trunk, breath ragged and uneven, each inhale clawing at his ribs like broken glass. His blood had slowed to a crawl, thick and dark, soaking through the fabric of his uniform. He didn't know how long he had left. An hour, maybe less. He didn't care. The mission wasn't survival. It never had been. It was to show them what humans could do when cornered, what they became when pushed too far. He smiled, a smear of crimson running from the corner of his mouth. You thought we were prey. That was your first mistake. Down the slope, he heard movement. Not alien. Human. Harper was dragging herself up the incline, one arm slung around a broken branch for support, legs trembling beneath her. The pain was written across every inch of her face, but she was still moving, still fighting. Cole didn't speak, didn't have the strength. She reached him and dropped to her knees at his side, fingers fumbling for the med pack at his belt. He tried to push it away, but she batted his hand aside. You don't get to die yet, Sarge, she whispered hoarsely. He chuckled, a horrible wet sound. You're late. Had to make sure they weren't coming back. They're not. She nodded, though her eyes never left the wound in his side. It was bad. Artery hit. He was already cold. She knew it. So did he. You get them all? She asked. Enough. Harper pressed a soaked bandage to his wound, her hands shaking. You shouldn't have come back out, he muttered. Neither should you. Touché. They sat in silence for a few moments, the cold creeping in like a shadow. Cole closed his eyes. Harper watched the tree lean. Above them, distant rotors cut through the air, thin, whoop-whoop, sounds approaching from the northeast. Human aircraft. Finally. Too late for most. But not for all. Cole stirred at the sound. Evac. Harper nodded, relief barely flickering in her tired eyes. Extraction team. They got the beacon. You bought us enough time. He gave a faint nod. Good. She looked down at him. His face had lost most of its color. Lips blue, eyes glassy. Still aware. Still focused. You don't get to check out yet, she said, voice firming. You have to file the report. Cole laughed again, then winced. That's the worst punishment I can think of. Then hang on. The snow around them glowed briefly as a dropship cleared the treetops, engines flaring. It settled just beyond the bluff with a hiss of hydraulics, side ramp already descending. Two medics sprinted down, gear in hand. Harper stood, waving them in. Cole's hand gripped her sleeve weakly. You finish it, he said. What? He coughed, blood flecking his lips. You finish the story. She stared at him. Let them know what happened, he continued, eyes locking onto hers. Let them know what we did, what they tried to erase. The medics reached them. One moved to lift Cole, but he waved them off with a twitch of his fingers. Wait. Harper knelt again, leaning close. Cole's voice was a rasp now. They need to know we weren't afraid, that we didn't run. Harper nodded once. They'll know. He gave the faintest smile. Then he let the medics take him. Harper watched as they lifted him onto the stretcher, securing the lines, prepping the four. His eyes closed, but his chest still moved. She followed them into the dropship, hand resting on the side panel as the ramp sealed behind them. As the craft rose into the gray sky, the battlefield shrank below, just another scar on the land. Just another forgotten story waiting to be buried by snow and silence. But she wouldn't let it be forgotten. She sat beside Cole, her gaze distant. This war had never been about numbers or firepower. It had been about belief, about superiority. The Cyrex believed themselves untouchable, enlightened, beyond consequence. They looked at humanity and saw something small, fragile, inferior. But now they knew better, because one dying soldier with a knife and a grudge had bled their elite into the soil. Because a woman with cracked ribs and a broken rifle had refused to die quietly. It wasn't about strength. It was about will, and humans were built from it. As the dropship cleared the mountain ridge, a second fleet of transports came into view. Reinforcements, relief squads, recovery crews. It was all protocol now. Late-stage cleanup for a war that had already ended in blood. Harper leaned back, eyes still locked on the distant tree line, fading beneath the snow. She'd tell them, all of it, about the ambush, about the fire, about the way Cole had stood when no one else could, about how the Cyrex stopped laughing. She would make them listen, because this wasn't just a victory. It was a warning, and somewhere out there, another species was watching, calculating, judging. She hoped they remembered this day, because next time they called humanity weak, they'd know exactly how wrong they were. And they'd remember the silence that came after the laughter stopped.